We were joined by NBC Nightly news anchor Lester Holt here downtown Houston, beautiful Eleanor Tinsley Park. Lester, I know you've been here plenty of times. Welcome back to our
Thank you. It
city.
is always great to be in Houston.
What brings you back this week?
We are kicking off a week, kind of a cross-platform series at NBC News on the climate challenge. And Texas specifically has suffered some climate challenges. You look at Harvey and you look at the freeze of last February, and a number of big storm and flood events, and all effects of climate change. And we want to come here and shine a light on what happened specifically last February with the infrastructure, electricity, and what's been learned from that. The message going out to other cities around the country that may face these sorts of things. The climate is changing, and government's response to climate is changing with it.
With the issues that we have had, you were here after Harvey. You, of course, have reported about what happened in February after the freeze there. What have we learned about how Houston deals with and has had to deal with the challenges that we've seen from these weather events?
I was able to interview a couple today and their 4 children, and they were out of their house for over 300 days as a result of Harvey, and then they were out of their house again because of the freeze event of earlier this year. And like a lot of people in this part of the country, they're tired and weary. They've been through a lot, and I think after what we saw in February, there's a clear recognition that it's not the old days. This is a new era when these extreme weather events are happening. And we talked to the mayor today about the need to really embrace new technologies, storing power, developing an infrastructure that can withstand and these kinds of things.
Speaking of new developments and technologies, as you well know, Houston is highly dependent. Our bread and butter is traditional forms of energy like oil and gas. How does a city like Houston respond to the demands of green energy, of new energy, when we are very heavily dependent on those traditional forms?
Yeah, you keep hearing the term resilience here, that there's got to be more resiliency built into those typical fossil fuel type forms of generating energy. But you're right, it's a part of Texas, that this is a huge energy producing state. And so I think the fear is, as you hit these crises, your natural instinct is to rely on what you have, which is the fossil fuels. Proponents, though, of green energy say you've got to get ahead of that and make that more resilient as well.
You mentioned you spoke to a family that was out of their home for almost an entire year after Harvey experienced the freeze a few months ago. What are some of the other stories you're going to be hitting and covering, the other issues while you're here in the entire week? Really?
Well, here in Texas, that's the bulk of it. But we want to get into the science of what's happening, how it's affecting us as communities. I mean, you look at Houston alone, the billions of dollars that Harvey cost, the billions of dollars that the freeze this past winter cost, and these are things that are being recognized in other parts of the country. And we're going to be doing stories about the response of those sorts of things and how places are approaching this crisis.
My last question for you. I know you're busy. From your position as a journalist, anchor of NBC Nightly News, when you look at this issue, when we have climate issues and it really impacting everywhere across the country, what's the best way, what's the responsibility of covering that for the country as we continue to work our way through that?
This is, as many will say, this is the issue. Of course, we're facing a lot of issues, so I wouldn't go that far. But I mean, clearly, this is where our environment we're talking about. Our environment is changing. It's not a political or a partisan viewpoint. The question is how much we're willing to recognize and how much we're willing to do about it. And I think that as we've seen here in other parts of the country, there is a sense of we have to act, we have to do something. And so it's important for us as a broadcast to kind of take a look at topics like this, and that's why we're giving it a whole week-long look.
Okay, all right. Lester Holt, anchor NBC Nightly News. Always glad to have you in our city.
It's great to see you, and thanks for always got a nice welcome here, so it's been terrific as usual.
Make sure you get some barbecue or some Tex-Mex on your way out.
All right.
All right, thanks so much.
You got it.